Noman ate some of my time. First of all, I wanted to thank Ilsa for putting this on. It's so timely. There's such a anti-Muslim sentiment in our country right now, and it's just really hard to avoid. You turn on the TV, you watch Fox News, on and on and on. It impacts, especially children, my kids, and it just gets nauseating after a while. Since we're in law school, I will talk about the law. One of my areas of focus in my practice is employment discrimination. So I've only practiced for about like 4 years, and in that time I've had a bunch of employment discrimination cases where Muslims have been targeted. So Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, and national origin. And it applies to employers that have 15 or more employees. Title VII also prohibits offensive conduct such as racial or ethnic slurs, racial jokes, derogatory comments, and other verbal or physical conduct based on individuals' race, religion, gender, national origin. The parallel statute in Missouri is the Missouri Human Rights Act. And the Missouri Commission of Human Rights takes on cases or takes complaints for violations. And at the federal level, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, takes those discrimination complaints. So as with everything, there are timelines. One must file a discrimination complaint 180 days of the alleged violation. If you pass the 180 days and you were discriminated against, you're out of luck. I've had people come in, it's like a year later, and I'm like, I wish you came sooner. A lot of times people are so traumatized, they don't want to talk about it. And by the time they're accepting of what happened to them, they're like, okay, I'm going to file a discrimination complaint. And I'm like, sorry, no can do. Your 180 days are up. So once you file that complaint, the MCHR, the Missouri Commission of Human Rights, or the EOC, have about 180 days to investigate your complaint. So both those organizations are very overwhelmed. Sometimes it takes them more than 180 days. So what I tell my clients, that if they're taking too long, ask them for a right to sue letter. And once you get that right to sue letter, you can sue your employer. But you have to go through these administrative hoops before you can file an employment discrimination claim. So now let's talk about Muslims. As Noman said, Muslims only comprise 1% of the US population. 3.3 million Muslims live in America, according to Pew Research Center. So the years following 9/11, there was a 250% rise in the number of religious discrimination complaints made by Muslims alone. And in 2011, 25%, or 1/4 of the religious discrimination complaints filed with the EOC were by Muslims. So Muslims comprise a very small segment of American society, yet they are being discriminated against on a daily basis at work. And believe me, a lot of people don't report. They just stay quiet and they're like, you know, pass, you know, what can we do? I mean, I hear this all the time, and they do nothing about it, or they just, you know, leave the job in hopes that their next employer or employment will be a better situation. So the top issues alleged in EEOC religious discrimination charges are getting fired for, you know, for your religion, oftentimes the religion, they use another excuse. They may make up something frivolous, like, oh, you were 2 minutes late. That's why, I mean, just something really frivolous. The second is harassment and hostile work environment. Third issue, unfair terms and conditions of employment. And the fourth is the employers are not providing reasonable accommodation for religious observances. For example, you know, the praying, the fasting, and wearing the hijab. So let's talk about the hijab. The hijab is the head covering which Muslim women wear for modesty. So it seems like most of my clients that have come to me, the women, they wear the hijab. And these women are being discriminated against and harassed in the most terrible way. Derogatory comments are made, like towel head, or you know, they make the assumption that you're submissive or you're lesser than a man, just all sorts of things. There was a recent Supreme Court ruling against Abercrombie and Fitch. I'm sure a lot of you heard about it. So Samantha Aloft, the plaintiff, she interviewed at Abercrombie and Fitch. She wore jeans, a nice white t-shirt. The only thing that was different was that she wore the hijab. Abercrombie Fitch did not hire her because of the hijab. So anyway, it just went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supremes held, it was an 8-1 decision. Justice Thomas dissented. So let me read what the majority said. So the court majority held that to win a claim of disparate treatment, job seekers just need to show that their need for accommodation was a motivating factor for an employer. So the girl's name is Samantha Aloft. Samantha is such an American name. So Samantha, so Abercrombie has this policy that you have to have this East Coast collegiate preppy look, and she fit into that. And so the Supreme Court said that she did not have to ask them to accommodate her. And that, so basically Abercrombie argued that she did not request that accommodation. So I have 5 minutes, so let me talk about some other cases. Let's talk about some harassment cases. So the EOC versus Rizal Cadillac. This was in Illinois. 3 Arab Muslim employees were subjected to a hostile work environment based on national origin. These 3 employees were mocked. They were called Hezbollah. There was insulting references. They would call sand and the N-word, and just awful things. And I just can't imagine in this day and age, it seems like it's so acceptable to name call Muslims. But anyway, in that case, Rizal Cadillac consented. There was a consent decree where they would provide the plaintiffs with punitive damages of over $100,000 and provide other relief also. Let me talk about some other cases. There was a recent case in Omaha, Nebraska with Somali meat packers. That case didn't go so well for us. The federal district judge ruled that the accommodation would be difficult for the employer, would cause undue hardship. Therefore, the Somali workers could not be accommodated. What they were asking for was breaks during prayer, and what triggered it was during the month of Ramadan, they wanted time off so they could quickly have their meal at sunset and pray. And I think there was a lot of friction between the other groups and the unions. So in short, I think it caused a lot of undue hardship. So the district judge ruled in favor of the employer, which is JBS. 2 minutes. Other case. Oh, and then CAIR recently filed a case. Again, a case regarding a woman who wears the hijab, and Fazan can talk to you more about that. So this woman, she applied to a security company. Was it Securitas? Securitas?
Yeah.
So she had a really good interview. During the phone interview, the employer asked her if she had any tattoos. She said no, she doesn't have a tattoo because it's covered up with the hijab. She recently converted to Islam. So basically they did not hire her because she wore the hijab. Now they have to face the wrath of CAIR and another law firm in federal court in the Eastern District of Missouri. One more case before I end. Another hijab case in Jackson County, Missouri. It's Bashir versus AT&T. This was the biggest verdict in Jackson County. It was like $5-something million. And that's a very conservative jurisdiction. So the Muslim woman, she won $5 million against AT&T. And in this case, Bashir recently converted to Islam, so she started wearing the hijab. Her co-workers would mock her, would jeer her. It got so bad that her employer, her boss, tried to pull the hijab off her head. So she had to take some time off because she was anxious. She just couldn't, go back to work, so they fired her. So she did what every good American citizen does, and she sued AT&T, had a trial, and she won it. So if you know someone who's being discriminated against, please, they need to act fast. You can't wait a year because you're out of luck. And I find that, initially I hated filing lawsuits. I was really naive. I was like, oh, let's try to solve this without filing a lawsuit. And I tried a couple of times. Nothing gets done. And then I was like, okay, all right, I'm not playing games anymore. I smack them with a lawsuit. Then people start to listen. So the rule is, don't be nice.